Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. It's been like 2 weeks on your end. Not bad considering past actions of myself. Anyway, today we're talking about all the books that I've read this year. I'm filming this on April 4th. I don't think I'm going to edit it, so it'll probably come out tomorrow, April 5th. But yeah, I'm lagging. This year has been, in terms of the number of books I've read, the worst year ever, really, in the past few years. Before I tell you the number of books that I've read this year alone, by this point in 2025 and 2024, I'm going to tell you the number of books I had read. In 2025, I had read 29 books by April 4th-ish. In 2024, I had read 30 books by April 4th-ish. This year, I've read 12. So over half as less. That's how you say that. It's okay though. I've been reading mostly good books, so it's fine. Quality over quantity. And I've been reading, like, I wouldn't say that I don't like any of these books. So that's cool. I don't have the dates that I read them because I just quit that this year. Who cares when I started and finished books? Not me. Maybe you do, and if you do, let me know, but I'm not going to until you let me know. So, I'm not going to care, I'm not going to write it down. The first book that I started and finished was called Social Creature by Tara Isabella Burton. This book I heard about from, I think it was like a 2025 year in review video. I don't remember who it was by, but it sounded interesting. I heard that it was a Talented Mr. Ripley adaptation, or like, it's inspired by the Talented Mr. Ripley. I won't spoil, don't worry if you haven't read that book, but I just read that it's like Woman this time, basically. And I was hooked. I searched it up on Libby, and it was available, and I got it, and I started reading it. A memory I have attached with this, I started reading this book when I got back on my campus, because as you may know, my parents recently-ish, over a year now, moved to somewhere else. So I have to take a plane to go see them. So I went back to that somewhere else place for the winter break. Got back on campus, and I was locked out of my dorm because the keys were changed. The door locks were changed, so I had to wait. I didn't sleep inside my room the first night I was back. So yeah, I remember listening to this audiobook to get me through the night, really. I did find a place to sleep. But anyways, yeah, it's pretty good. I read it in like 2 days. Audiobook only. Really good audiobook reader. Like the voices, at least one voice is like stuck in my head even now. But I just enjoyed it. Classic case about jealousy and fame, power, money, yeah, all interesting stuff to read about. Yeah. Anything else I want to say? It wasn't, I think I was expecting it to be more like the Talented Mr. Ripley, but the story is very much different, pretty different, so don't go into this thinking you're gonna have the same story. But it was a cool way to start my year, especially because, okay, I will edit this video a little bit. Okay, but especially because it's a book that I just randomly heard about and I just started impromptu, just randomly, arbitrarily. If I hadn't watched that video, I wouldn't have even heard about this book, and I would have never read it for the first book of 2026. I do have so many books that I need to read this year. Have a video about it, so check out that if you'd like. But this was not on that video because I probably hadn't heard of that book when I filmed that video. Yeah, it's always cool to find a random book that you find and enjoy it. So the next book that I read is Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. This has kind of been on my TBR for a while. This is my second John Green. I've read The Fault in Our Stars as well, which I also made a video about. as it happens. But this is a nonfiction book all about tuberculosis. I don't remember that much about this book, I'll be honest. But the parts that I remember enjoying were what we attribute with being sick, how tuberculosis has changed through the years, or how we've called it, well, how we've considered it. I also enjoyed the through line through the book. John talks about this boy that he met somewhere in Africa. I don't want to say Uganda, but that may be wrong. His name was Henry, I believe. But the book kind of like, along with historical context, follows Henry through his journey. But yeah, it is, I would say it's pretty sad, or just because the nature of disease itself is sad. So, trigger warning for that, maybe. The next book that I have written down. Keep in mind, this is not in the order that I finished these books. These are the orders that I started these books, more or less. The next book that I started was The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. I've been wanting to read this book for a while, and it did not disappoint, although it was so information heavy. I'll definitely have to reread this book. But yeah, it just talks about trauma's effect on the body. I feel like I was expecting more, if I'm being honest. I did like, there's a section of the book where they talked about the ACEs study. ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And I had heard about that from another class that I took called Mind, Body, and Health. So that's cool to like read something that I had read before, in another context. But this is pretty interesting. I think everyone can get something out of this. I kind of do want to read more like psychology-focused books, and this was one of them that I read that I relatively liked. Again, very information heavy. Next, I read 107 Days by Kamala Harris. She was the Democratic presidential nominee last year in the US for president. And this follows her journey from, I guess, announcing her run for the presidency to election day. A little over that, I think, but like each chapter starts with the date, how many days before the election. That got old fast, but it was cool to listen to it in her voice. She reads the audiobook. Some chapters are way shorter than others, which is interesting. I don't think we needed a look on all the 107 days, and I don't remember some of those 107 days. But yeah, as a person not really, kind of regrettably, versed in politics, it was cool or interesting listening into a candidacy, the process of campaigning in such a short amount of time comparatively to how much time other people usually get. I would like to read Kamala Harris's other book, The Truths We Hold. I also think it'd be interesting to read Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance. I don't know if Donald Trump has a book. Maybe I'll read that. I think it'd be cool. I think it would be informational and important to just know more about politics-ish. I also want to read, Dreams from My Father by Barack Obama. Just read books by presidents, honestly, and vice presidents. Just because, that is a part of being politically conscious, but also these books were written in the past, and the reason I want to become more politically conscious is because of the present. So that also means potentially watching the news once every month. Probably not. I don't like the news. Okay. moving on, Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. This is a book that I read, 2 years ago. During the move, I lost it. I have no idea where it went. But just as with the first time I read this book, I listened to the audiobook. Wait a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you may be seeing me come to a revelation. I don't think I ever owned this book. I think I made that up. Because I remember reading the audiobook the first time, and why would I read the audiobook if I had the physical book? So I feel like I just read the audiobook, was going to buy the physical book, and then didn't. But always thought that I did. Whoa. I'm gonna have to think about that more off camera, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened. But anyways, I read this, I listened to the audiobook again. Took me less than 24 hours, just as it did the first time. Tiffany D. Jackson knows how to write a thriller, a book in general. I've read one other book by her called The Weight of Our Blood, which is like a Carrie retelling if Carrie was black. That was good too. That was also 2024. But this one is about a singer named Enchanted Jones, and she crosses paths with a famous musician named Corey Fields. And it just talks about how the music industry takes advantage of young girls, of women, of non-males. But yeah, it was, I feel like I went in thinking that I remember more than I actually ended up doing, which is cool because I kind of was able to experience this book kind of for the first time again. So yeah, another book that I read, in fact the next book that I read, was The Devil's Highway by Luis Alberto Urrea. I read this book for a class that I'm in called Human Rights on the U.S.-Mexican Border, and I procrastinated, so I ended up reading this book the night before we were going to discuss it in class. It's like 120-ish pages. I read I feel like maybe halfway the night before, and then the other half before class the next day. But yeah, this was interesting. It just talks about the struggle of migrants coming into the U.S. through the desert. I can't remember what the desert is called though. It's nicknamed the Devil's Highway, but it's a desert in Arizona, I believe. But it just talks about the struggle, and it also is about what led to the migrants wanting to come to the U.S., their experience within the desert, and the experience of after the desert, if they survived. So it also follows or talks about the coyote who led them through the desert. I just think it's just a perspective that I haven't considered too much before this class, so I'm really thankful for this class for exposing me to some movies, some books, all to do with immigration. So yeah, pretty cool. Okay, so the next 3 books that I have, I actually discussed in a video already, the last video that I actually posted, which is a reading vlog. Yeah, it was 2 weeks in my reading life, and the books that I read for that are The Price of Salt by Patricia Highsmith, How You Say It by Catherine D. Kinsler, and If You See Me Don't Say Hi by Neil Patel. What's interesting about the second one, How You Say It, I searched it up on Libby, and then I searched it up on the internet, and I got 2 different titles, which is really weird. The one that I was familiar with on the internet is How You Say It, Why You Judge Others by the Way They Talk, and the Cost of This Hidden Bias. But on Libby it says How You Say It, Why You Talk the Way You Do, and What It Says About You. Interesting. I feel like the first title is less misleading, because it doesn't really, at least in my experience reading the book, it doesn't make you yourself, the reader, directly consider the judgment directly consider the way that you talk, the reader talks, themselves talk. Does that make sense? But yeah, these are all library books. Pretty cool. most of the books that I've read this year have been library books. Yes, that's true. I also listen to a few audiobooks. Everything is Tuberculosis. I also listen to an audiobook. I don't know if I mentioned that. I did The Body Keeps the Score, 107 Days, and Grown as well, audiobooks. So maybe it's not mostly library books. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sorry. How many did I read in all? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I read 7 audiobooks, 5 library books. So I'm kidding. Audiobooks take the cake. My bad. Anyways, the next book that I read was The Stepford Wives by Ira Levin. You may have heard about the movie. I've watched the 1975 version twice. Read it. I watched it once before reading the book, then I read the book, and then right after that I watched the movie. I will say the movie is a bit of a drag the second time. I liked the last act, but it was a little boring before that. It takes place in Connecticut, which is pretty cool. I have some experience with that place, so yeah. Ira Levin is also an author of other books that I've heard of, like Rosemary's Baby. Apparently he wrote that. That's cool. But yeah, I like this book. For some reason, I feel like I've said this in another video, but it always surprises me how understanding and relatable books written in like the 1950s, 1960s can be for like current readers in the 2020s. But yeah, I feel like this book could be written today in the way that it was written, and that was interesting to me. So yeah, this book was in third person, which I don't really gravitate towards historically, but now I realize that it doesn't really matter. A good story is a good story. And I was able to understand the character, the main character, whatever her name is, in third person, which may not be surprising to some people, but it kind of was to me. Yeah, I would say that in this case, the book is better than the movie. Okay, next we have Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Mellors. This is a book that I haven't been able to talk about anywhere, but this is my favorite book that I read this year, and it is making me stop my self-inflicted book buying ban. It hasn't really been a ban, but starting like last year, basically, I have committed to only buying books after I've read them to make sure that I want to keep them in my library, right? So I read a book, then I buy it. I don't buy a book and then read it, and then inevitably, potentially, like donate it, return it. There's no need for that. No need to spend that money, so yeah, but I had heard of Cleopatra and Frankenstein for a while, and I finally gave it a try, and it was so good. I listened to the audiobook completely. No, I actually read a little bit of the physical book as well. Started with the audiobook, then it returned, so then I requested the physical book, read that, and then finished through the physical book, actually. So it's just so good. It talks about kind of the perspective of a non-American to America. Like it follows the main character, Cleo, is British. That's pretty cool. And the other main character is Frank. He's American. But it just talks about their lives, how they intertwined, and also their circle of friends. Basically, every character in this has a chapter, which is cool. It reminds me of Little Fires Everywhere, one of my, a book that I consider a perfect book. A reason why I like that book so much, Little Fires Everywhere, is that it is able to seamlessly switch between perspectives of different characters. And Cleopatra and Frankenstein does this extremely well as well, while also giving each character like their own chapter, which Little Fires Everywhere didn't necessarily do. So yeah, so good. I have the second book by the author called Blue Sisters. Libby I have like 8 days left with it. I'm gonna have to start reading it. Maybe I'll start it today or next week. But yeah, It's so good, so good. It inspires me. It makes me I want to write like this one day, like this book. I want to feel the way that I felt reading this book when said I want a reader of my book to feel like I felt when I read this book. Or I said that pretty fast. Okay, so yeah. And then the most recent book that I finished is Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I read this through a book club that I have with some friends. And this also has a perspective of a non-American on America. It follows Ifemelu, who is Nigerian. She moves to America, and then she actually moves back to Nigeria. We follow her as well as a friend that she had in primary school, I want to say, named Obinze. So yeah, I will say this book is long, and I could feel its length, and there are lots of characters, and a lot of them I don't care about, to be frank. Not Frank from Cleopatra and Frankenstein though. So yeah, it was good. I liked a lot about this book. I liked certain lines a whole lot. There's a section about raising children in the American way versus the non-American way that I have a picture of on my phone. That means when that happens, that's a monumental thing. Yeah, but as much as I like certain sections of it, I just took a while to read it. And that is partially because I was in the book club, but also because I sometimes just wasn't motivated to pick it back up. I would read a chapter and say, okay, I'm good. And I feel like the best books make you want to keep reading forever and ever and ever. And this book, unfortunately, was not one of those. It's fine, though. I'll probably read other Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie books, but this time I'll make sure to take less time reading them. I actually bought one, so I am a hypocrite, as all of us are sometimes from time to time, because I did buy Dream Count by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. That's her most recent book, and I haven't read it, but I own it. I just saw it at Barnes & Noble, and it had it was during the 50% off sale, and it's so cool. So I wanted to, and I did buy it. No regrets. But yeah, mostly I don't buy new books I have read. But those are all the books that I read this year so far. 16, if I remember, 12. It's 12 so far. If this is any indication, we're what? 1, 2, 3 months through 2026. That's a fourth of the year. So if I continue at the speed, I'll read about 50 or less books by the end of the year. I hope that is not going to be the case. But it may be, and that'll be okay. That'll be okay. Compared to other years, I'm happy to say that I've enjoyed all the books that I've read. Can I say that? I've liked all the books that I've read, and that wasn't the case in previous years. I think sometimes there's just an urge that I have to just finish a book, just to finish it, or to read a book just to read it. Yeah, the number doesn't really mean anything if I don't want it to mean anything. So 12 books, good for me. I have so many books to read, lots of library books specifically. So yeah, I've also been busy for school. I'm not making excuses, but like, I've been doing other things than reading, which is cool. Like, I can read from anywhere. I'm only going to be in college for like 3 to 4 years. So, yeah. And I don't regret it. I'm not saying sorry for having read a lot less than usual. But yeah, it is something that I wanted to acknowledge because this is a big change. But yeah. I don't really know what the future holds in terms of life, but also this channel. There's like one video that I want to do where I just talk about generally, is the book always better than the movie? The answer is no. I've already discussed that in a specific video, and I also have an entire playlist where I read the book and watch the adaptation. But I kind of just want to make a summative video to kind of like close that playlist, because I haven't like updated it in a while, and talk about what makes an adaptation a good one and what makes an adaptation better than the original, in my experience, because I've read and watched so many, yeah, and I haven't documented it all, most of them on this channel, so I kind of want to do that. Yeah, I guess I do know what the future holds in terms of that. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Like this video, please. I'd also appreciate that. And yeah, I think that's it.